Powered by Go-Goat Sports and in partnership with TSN, this is Season 3. It is Episode 21 of the Ray Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. We've got Darcy Tucker, former Toronto Maple
was he a pain in the ass?
I can't wait to have this conversation. So Rob Gray, who is our illustrious leader here on the production side, bit of editorial push, describes Darcy Tucker as a Leaf legend. I don't know if that's that far from the truth, right? I mean, he's a well-recognized Toronto Maple Leaf.
Do you know how? Okay, now I think I pay attention. I think
you do.
I played against Darcy Tucker for about, I think, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I had totally erased from my memory where he was drafted. No, he's a Montreal Canadian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No idea. And then I was like, oh. Geez, he was in Tampa. I remember him in Tampa.
There was a stop in Colorado.
Yeah, but that was at the end. I only associate him with the Leafs.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Like, it's really, I was like, wow, I don't even remember him in Montreal.
We'll talk to Darcy about this. I mean, that's part of the fun of having alumni players on is the experiences that you shared. I mean, was there ever an incident, interactions, anything like that?
No, because I thought he was slightly crazy. And so he was the type of guy, and I'll tell him when those were the guys that worried me. The really tough, the big, like the fighter tough guys, they never worried me because they weren't going to fight me. No. They just throw me over the glass on the way to the guy that they were fighting. But Darcy, guys like that always worried me because what if you got them when they were just a little bit off that night and they're like, you know what? I'm going to run him over just because.
So last week, the Leafs play Calgary, right? And Zadorov hammers Andre Kasha. Now, Kasha was kind of leaning down, but you got big versus small. And we don't have to relive it. But it was a thunderous hit. And almost instantly, it might be the first question I asked Tux. He tweets almost immediately about, I wish I was in Calgary and had my skates with me. Like, what? Like, what? Like, I mean, because that was the type of game that he would have loved to play in because he played so many of them, right? And the first thing I visualized when I read the tweet were those wild eyes. Remember? Like, you just look at him and he was like, I mean, that would be enough for me to go exit stage left, man. I'm gone.
Okay, so, but back then, the difference of today, one of the differences of today and then is that while Morgan Riley went down and kind of wrestled around with Zadorov, that wouldn't have ended there.
No.
In our day, certainly with Darcy, is that though their better players would have been on alert the rest of the night.
No question.
And not just he would have made it everybody just nervous enough.
Yeah.
And the Leafs, and he also had a collection of guys around him there. Like that Leaf team was tough.
They were well-rounded.
And they would make you a little nervous.
Yeah.
For the rest of the night.
All right. We've got Darcy Tucker coming up on the podcast. I don't know if you've noticed or not. I mean, you're a very observant
Probably
person. I've got the FootJoy hat on. I've got the FootJoy tarp on. And as if we don't need another protest in our world, but look, I'm observing the good people, Mitch Dawson, all the fine people with FootJoy and Team Titleist and all of that. So thank you. But look, I did the Ottawa Senators game against the Buffalo Sabres Thursday night. We're recording here Friday morning. I'm in a big 4x4 and I'm going down the 401. There's a team of snowplows in front of me, 12 or more on the 401. And there's like little Honda Civic, Prius, just zipping around out there trying to pass the snowplows. And I'm going 60K because it was messy out there. So my protest is this. As soon as we get done the podcast, guess what I'm doing for about 2.5 hours?
Back to the snowblower?
Oh, full on snowblower. I've got, there's 10 inches of snow out there right now, right?
Well, I got to tell you, Dregs, I got to tell you, because like I see the FootJoy stuff. I have my FootJoy hoodie. Yeah. But it's a little hot in here this morning, right? Yeah, no. So, that Mitch sent out. Yeah. Love it. Thank you, Mitch. And yesterday, I I played golf.
Come on. In Vancouver,
Yes.
near Vancouver.
Yep. Yeah, it was 8 or 9 degrees. Had a vest on.
Jealous.
And had my FootJoy rain jacket, which kept me kind of warm, and played pretty well. It's early in the year when you just hit it and you don't really care where it goes.
Yeah, some of the best golf.
You're out there zipping around with the snowblower, and I was like, about halfway through the round, I'm like, how great is this? I'm playing golf. It's February.
Yeah.
My buddy, he was on his 16th round.
Come on.
I go, how do you get to work? Like, do you work? And he's like, yeah. He goes, when I play golf, we finish by 2, and then he works from like 2 to about 8.
Yeah.
Like he just pushes his day back.
Okay.
And I'm like, huh, good. That's what I said. Yeah. 16 rounds. I said, I think you'd be better than you are. You suck.
Is it spongy? Is it wet? Or is it
little wet, Dregs, a little wet between holes.
Jealous.
I would say they're within a couple of weeks to everything springing up here.
And are you home free now, essentially? Like by weather, I mean, it's just going to continually get.
I always hate saying that.
Yeah.
I will say one other thing I got that happened yesterday, which is maybe the greatest thing that's happened in the last little bit, is even with all the great stuff going on with our family, is that I got my letter from my doctor, my travel recovery letter. I don't have to test for 90 days.
Oh,
for travel. Run. And for the one of my buddies goes, you got the golden ticket. And so I fortunately feel good after COVID. Excellent. And I got my recovery letter, no testing, going in and out of the US for 90 days, which is 90 one way, 180 the other way. But it's pretty nice stuff.
Get out of jail free card for Ray Ferraro for an extended period. Look, as we've talked about, we've got Darcy Tucker coming up on the podcast, and our headlines are going to be dedicated, for the most part, to an international theme. So we've got a whole lot coming up here in episode 21.
You know what we should have got there? We should have got Gord.
Tell me.
Well, because Gord Miller knows international hockey.
Does
we should have had him on here.
I've never heard him. I've never seen a tweet about international.
No. Actually, you should. You should follow him on Twitter. He does have an opinion or three.
And time for headlines presented by our good friends at Boston Pizza. If you're looking to add some spice to your game day lineup, try Boston Pizza's new hearty jalapeno popper dip. It's loaded with cheeses, jalapenos, bacon, and maybe you pair it with their signature cactus cut potatoes on the side. Stop by your local Boston Pizza, give them a call, or, of course, you can order online. Headlines, Ray, we thought we'd dedicate, for the most part, to all the international stuff that has gone on and continues to go on, and look into the future as well. But let's start with a positive, as we like to in headlines on the podcast, and that's Canada winning gold in Olympic women's hockey, defeating Team USA. So you've got the arch rivals there, and a typical but storybook ending for Marie-Philippe Poulin, who scores 2 goals in pacing Canada to that win. Anytime those two teams meet, and they often meet in championship games, either the Women's Worlds or in this case the Olympic stage, you're in for a hell of a game. And this one didn't disappoint.
No, it must be really disappointing to get to a gold medal game and to come out and be flat.
Yeah.
And the US was. They were flat at the start. They play and anticipate and want to beat the Canadians all the time, and they came out and they just didn't have it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you explain it, but they just didn't have it. And Canada was rolling.
Yeah.
Like early, they looked faster and quicker. And you know what it looked like to me? I was at the gold medal game in 2018 in Pyeongchang, and the US was so much faster.
Yeah.
Like that game ended the way it should have. Mm-hmm. Like both of these, the last 2 Olympics, the gold medals went to the team that deserved them. The US I know it went to a shootout, but they could have won that game by 3 goals. Canada could have won the other night by 3 goals. Like they were the better team. And it's so impressive to watch that no matter how those games are, eventually they always seem to be 1-goal games.
Right. Yeah.
Now, as you know, Landon was over there, got to play in the one game for Canada. But he said watching Marie-Philippe Poulin and the way that she carries herself, not the play. He's talking about just carrying herself. He's like, you just see she's a leader, a boss.
Interesting.
Like, he's like, you just see she's a star.
Yeah.
And her production, when the game is on the line, it's like it's almost comical to think that she might not score. When Canada got up 1-0, Arpan Basu from The Athletic tweeted out, well, this just about becomes a 2-0 lead because Poulin is going to score somewhere. And then she scored, and it was 2-0.
Yeah.
She's a remarkable player, but Desbiens in goal was fantastic. Terrific. Yeah. So when the U.S. started to roll a little bit, she was a star. Yeah. I mean, the women played exceptional hockey, and now the trick is to make that game continue in the middle of these 4 years till the next Olympics or whatever else is coming down the pike. But you can't just say, "Oh, that was great," and then disappear. And that's the challenge and goal for the women's game right now.
We like to make these big proclamations in the media and make these vast comparisons, right? And as soon as Canada wins gold on the women's side, automatically this is the best Canadian women's team we've ever seen. Best ever. And, it's backed up a little bit, I suppose, given the fact that they've established a scoring record, right? An Olympic scoring record. So you have that going for them. I feel like when we do this, maybe not purposely, it sort of diminishes the past experiences and the greatness of some of the good teams that we've seen historically, not just in Canada, but why does there have to be a best team ever? Right now, the Canadian women are the best team in the world, right? Maybe that changes, at the next Women's World Championship or the next Olympics. I don't know, but It always sort of bugs me when we make those comparisons.
I guess a lot of it is because it's the latest thing you've seen.
Right.
And if you try to compare back over the teams that have played, you're going to forget players, you're going to forget context. It's impossible to do. So that bugs you. You know what bugs me is when I hear the term GOAT. Do people realize what that means?
Mm-hmm.
If it's greatest of all time, isn't that one person, not 113 people? When people say, "Oh, the new GOAT," no, there's only one. If that's what, So I really dislike historical comparisons. I like to chop them up into blocks. So you might say, are they the best team of the last 20 years?
Right.
Or are they, was Bobby Orr the best defenseman of all time, or of those 40 years?
His era, right? Yeah.
And I think that's important because, look, Bobby Orr was, he was training with nothing. If he had today's training, what would he have looked like in today's game?
Yeah.
But how would you know?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how would you know what the greatest players of the women's game would have done with the commitment to training and the access that the girls have today? Those girls didn't have it before.
Right.
So, it's, in my mind, it's impossible. I appreciate watching the ability of the women today. And to me, there's no comparison, just like in the men's game,
right,
of the growth of the skill from decade to decade. It's really amazing.
So Canada and the U.S. on the men's side, as we know, failed to qualify for the medal round. I mean, disappointing is an understatement, especially for you. I mean, Landon was there, played the one game as you've talked about, and everybody was hoping for so much more. So what are your takeaways when you look at, what Canada didn't do and what the American team wasn't able to do?
Well, I think it's, it's funny. It's almost like when you watch fans or media of an NHL team and they say, this team needs to draft and be patient and develop. And then when they do that, the fans and the media say, well, they got to hurry up. They got to, you can't be both, right? You can't be patient and develop and then do it today.
Right.
You can't do the two very different things the same. The NHL players not going hurt Canada and the US more than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
The secondary part of that is a lot of players are in the American League that wouldn't be eligible to play.
Right.
The third part is, so the US was leading 2-1 with under a minute left against Slovakia.
Mm-hmm.
And if they win, they're in the semifinals.
Yeah.
Well, they give up a goal and lose a shootout. Well, that's the way it goes. Canada's 0-0 in the middle of the third against a Swedish team that played as perfect a game as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, 2 days before, the Swedish media and their fans were all over Johan Garpenlov. They're like, this team is terrible.
Yeah.
He picked the wrong team. Well, they played a great game. Canada did not. They didn't play very well.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would say, without trying to single anything out, is, Eric Stahl had played 4 games. He comes into the Olympics. They had him in their mind to be a big offensive producer.
Right.
He just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like it just wasn't there. David Desharnais, who had a really nice NHL career, had no impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are 2 players they probably counted on to create offense for them. And they just weren't able to do it. Now, the U.S. did this with Brian Boyle at the Worlds back in the spring. And Boyle played on the 4th line, and he killed penalties, and he had a tremendous impact.
Mm-hmm.
But to ask Eric Stahl in games 5 through 9 of his season to make, I think you're probably asking a bit much. And they ran, they just didn't score. They didn't score. You don't score, you don't win.
I wonder what, Hockey Canada, USA Hockey, do you just shelve it because of everything that you said initially? The fact that, it was a late withdrawal by the National Hockey League. There were the restrictions put on. Look, if you've got a pro North American contract, you're not eligible to play. So, maybe it's a one-off. Maybe Hockey Canada, USA Hockey never has to deal with this again. Or do you internalize a little bit and say, okay, what do we need to learn from this? The Swedes, to your point, wasn't popular the way Johan Garpenlov put that team together, but they found a way to be successful in that. So right. Is that the takeaway from the Federation's perspective? Okay, maybe we've got to learn to do things differently, even though we have to adjust when we get there.
I don't think they have to do things differently, because who knows if this is ever a format again.
Yeah.
So I do think that Canada in particular needs to get by the thought of, this is the Canadian way. There is no Canadian way really, other than we like to think of ourselves with commitment and energy and heart, right? Those are trademarks of Canadian hockey. But I don't think you can say this is how we've done it and this is how we'll always do it.
Yeah.
I think you have to constantly evolve, change, lean a little more to skill, lean a little more to being creative, because the rules of the game are changing and have changed in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. has gone that way, and I think they've taken a quantum leap in the way that they develop their players. Now, in this tournament, offense is not a thing. Nobody is scoring a lot. Like the Finns beat Slovakia to get to the final. They won 2-0.
Yeah.
Right. And so in that game, they score once in the first and once in the third. That's it. Game over. As we're taping this, we'll have the answer for you shortly here. But the Swedes and Russia are tied in a shootout right now to go to 1-1. Right? Like there's no why. You don't have to change too much, but I think you've always got to look at it, always be open to change. And I think there is a stubbornness at times to not change.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it was so stubborn that they wore those uniforms that nobody could see the damn numbers in.
Oh, drove me
How about
bananas.
change them? How about
Yeah.
put a white border around the numbers? It would, and I'll be honest with you, if I didn't know what Landon looked like from 4 miles away skating,
You
I would
wouldn't
have
have
never
known
been
who he
able.
was.
I would say, yeah, he played out there, I guess, because I couldn't see.
Yeah,
But
you heard Chris Cuthbert call his name. That was
yeah,
about it. Yeah.
I will say, I love CC. He
Yeah.
is hilarious and such a pro. He said early in the game, cracked me up. He goes, "Oh, Canada's wearing their stealth uniforms again," because they're calling it off a monitor in Toronto.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Of the things that didn't go right, those jerseys, a swing and a miss.
All right, 2 more things internationally to touch on. 2024 World Cup of Hockey. NHL Players Association met this week, Thursday, to talk about. Now, they're in the preliminary discussions. The IIHF hasn't even been brought into the mix yet, but the IIHF is fully on board. Luke Tardif told me that emphatically. We're in. Let's just make this happen. The target seems to be February of 2024. So now you're going to get a little pushback from the owners, right? They're going to say, okay, we're shutting down the regular season of the NHL. What are we getting out of this? How much money are we going to make? And they'll deal with that.
Yeah, but Dregs, that's like that can be worked on.
Yeah.
The Olympics cannot,
right?
Because the Olympics are a vacuum. Everything goes right into their pocket.
Yeah.
And the NHL gets a pat on the head, and the players get a thank you, and that's it.
Yeah.
This will be a revenue generator. I cannot, given that nobody has seen best on best in what will be 10 years, right? Because it's been more than 10 years, because it'll be past 2 Olympic cycles. I think they'll rocket this through the roof here.
Mm-hmm.
Where the games are going to be played, how they're going to be set up, all that stuff is going to matter. But you will be able to singularly promote this tournament in a way that you can't with the Olympics, because the Olympics have everything else going on. This will shut everything down, and we'll watch this with great focus.
Would you go just country versus country and not
Yes.
have Team Europe, Team North America?
No. Country versus country is, if you want best versus best,
do it.
You can't make it. You can't make it a sideshow.
No. All right, World Junior Championship, near and dear to your heart, August 8th to 19th, I believe. We know it's the middle of August.
That's prime golf season, sir.
But you know what? I talked to Jeff O'Neill about this the other day. The golf around Edmonton, right, is pretty choice. There's nothing wrong with the golf around Edmonton.
So you're talking to O, who does one Canadian game every 2 days.
I know.
Yeah, tell him to beat it.
Well, you know what?
You know what O'Neill's focus and function is going to be at that tournament? Setting up tee times
for sure
when we can play.
Yeah. And
so, but here's the thing: I'm glad it's going back.
Yeah.
Those people have just been, they've been on the cusp of going to the junior tournament for 2 years now. It's going to be far different, because a lot of those players aren't going to. The ones that we knew from Christmas, they're not going there in August.
No.
If I'm the Buffalo Sabres, Owen Power's not going there.
But does that matter to you? It doesn't matter to me.
No, because the next group of guys is coming.
Exactly. And it might even be, from an NHL perspective, it might be better if you've got 10, 15, 20 spots worldwide available, and now you've got some younger draft eligible players who haven't really been looked at. They haven't been compared to best on best. If I'm a scout or an NHL general manager, man, I'm there. I want to see those kids because I haven't seen them in that type of environment.
Well, the young kid for Slovakia, Slafkowski, who was just amazing at the Olympics. He was started off at the junior tournament in December, and you could see he was going to be a force, and then the tournament ended. There'll be somebody like that.
Right. Yeah.
You know who's going to be in that tournament? Might be kind of interesting. Matty Michkov from Russia and Connor Bedard.
Yeah, two
Like
stars.
we're going to see those, and these guys. This will be the start of their ramp up to their draft year.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. The tournament will be terrific. But Dregs, I think we have to acknowledge here, because there was such a furor about it. But it's not just the World Junior Tournament. The women's tournaments are rescheduled.
Yeah,
they're going. I don't even know, when is the World Junior Tournament again? August the 8th,
the 19th, I believe. Yeah.
And the women's worlds are
earlier, I believe.
Later July, I believe.
Yeah.
And the U18 women's is in that same time frame.
Right.
It's like you can't just reschedule this stuff.
No.
Next Tuesday.
Yeah.
The calendar needed to be completed, and those women's tournaments are every bit the focus as well. Let's not. I mean, they're putting the World Junior back in Edmonton because the building's there. They want to put people in the building. That tournament has to go, and so it is going to go. And the women's worlds are going to go. The U18s are going to go, and then we're going to get right back on the hockey calendar. I'm happy to see all of it because it needs to happen.
I asked about Siberia. Right, the next World Juniors, just because of the political unrest and everything that's going on. I almost got my head snapped off. They were like, "What are you asking about that for?" Like, we have so
let us
many
get through
events.
August, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's well played.
Well, I'll tell you one thing: with the unrest there, it doesn't really make me kick up my heels and say, "Oh, what a great idea next Christmas to go there."
Well, you've got a lot of time to fester and worry.
Oh yeah, I got a lot to do before there. We all do.
Thank you, Boston Pizza. Those are your internationally flavored headlines this week. Our interviews on Ray and Dregs are brought to you by our friends at Canadian Club Whiskey, who are asking, are you over beer? Why not try a refreshing CC ginger ale? Throw some lime in there. Spice it up next time you're having a drink or watching a game. All right, pleased to welcome Darcy Tucker, former Toronto Maple Leaf legend, NHL extraordinaire, joining us here in episode 21 of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. And Tuck says, Ray and I were talking about earlier in the podcast, I want to start our discussion with a tweet that you sent out last week during the Toronto Maple Leaf Calgary Flames game, right? I mean, that game had a little bit of bite in it, especially from Calgary's perspective. But big Nikita Zadorov just absolutely hammers Ondrej Kase. Now, we can debate whether it was a clean hit, doesn't really matter. I mean, big versus small. But you tweeted almost instantly, quote, love to be in Calgary with a pair of skates right now. And as Ray and I discussed, all I can see when I'm reading this tweet, and we were doing that game, was the wild eyes and just thinking what Darcy Tucker would be doing in the moment or throughout the rest of the game. So explain what you were feeling when you tweeted that in watching that game and that hit.
Well, I think first off, people got to understand my personality is pretty tongue-in-cheek to begin with.
Yeah.
You know, I like to enjoy myself and have fun, and in that moment, it was kind of one of those things where you really wish you were still a player. Those things kind of never really leave you. I'm from Alberta. I grew up an Oilers fan and disliking the Flames to begin with. So to be watching the game and see that hit, it was kind of one of those things where you just kind of go to yourself, man, I wish I still had a pair of skates and could be on the ice and out there with the guys. But, I'm pretty self-deprecating when it comes to understanding and knowing that it was over a long time ago, so having those pair of skates wouldn't really matter to anybody anyway.
By the time you would have got there at your current speed, that thing would have been way over.
Zadorov would have been going out for his next shift by the time I would have reached him. So
I was telling Dregs, though, like, of course, the game was clearly very different then than now. That hit happens, and if that's in your day, our day, the rest of the night, their best guys are a little nervous, correct?
Absolutely. The first thing that would have been said to him was probably, guess what's happening now with Mr. Goudreau and Monahan and the likes of that. So that kind of probably would have been there. But for me, it's like I'm not sure if Thomas Caberlet would have came from all the way back there and tried to go after Zadorov. So I was like, why is Morgan allowed to skate by somebody and get at this guy? There should have been 3 or 4 other guys in there before that. But I mean, listen, that's the way it kind of goes now. But most of it for me is like you watch the game and it has changed, and it changed for the better, in my opinion. You know, I've got 2 young lads playing the game, and I tell them all the time, stay out of the stuff and just play the game, because at the end of the day, that's what you're there to do anyway.
When you were growing up, you're playing in Alberta, then you head out to Kamloops, and you guys have like those amazing teams in Kamloops in the Western League, and you guys kind of had it all. You were skilled and tough and big, and like, is that kind of where your style sort of developed, or were you that way growing up anyway? Like, just you were so intense when you played.
I don't know if it kind of hit me around junior. I was kind of a softie growing up as a kid. I didn't really play high level hockey.
Oh, come on.
I was I didn't really play high level hockey as a kid. So for me, I was just enjoying the game, and it came very natural and very easy because of the level of play I was playing at. So when I left home at 15 to play in Red Deer, was kind of like the first, time in my life where I had to like really gut something out. And I think it taught me a lot about who I needed to be and what I needed to do to become a player that could play junior. And I wasn't even thinking about the NHL at that time. I was just thinking about playing hockey at the highest level. I didn't even know what the Kamloops Blazers were when I left home. I was so insulated by the town I grew up in that all this stuff was like, you play junior B and you become a farmer. That's the way I was thinking.
So hey Darcy, like when you were little, like you never dreamed of playing in the NHL, because that's all I ever thought about. Like,
no, like it was like play for my hero was my dad. He played in the senior men's team in town, and I used to go to those games and run the clock and sit in the penalty box. Maybe that's where I learned all the bad language. Going in the penalty box was those old farmers going at it between the boxes, and then having to get up and feed the cows the next morning. But I mean, for me, it was just there was really no, it seemed like a movie on TV. We had 2 channels, and you got the Saturday night game, and it was mostly just a dream or a movie on TV to me. I never really thought about it. And I met Lanny McDonald, I guess, when I was about 12 years old. And then, to be able to reach out and actually touch the man that was on the ice, it was kind of like, wow, it's not a movie. It's actually reality. And this could be something that could happen. But I didn't really think about it that way, to be honest with you. I was so, like I said earlier, I was so insulated by, the town of, 100 people that it just didn't really become reality until I got to junior.
You were a big scorer in junior. Like your last couple of years, you put up some big numbers. And then I told Dregs earlier on, I totally erased, Darcy, from my memory that you were drafted by Montreal and then traded to Tampa. Like, do you even do people even recognize that you played there, or are you just a Leaf?
For the most part, just a Leaf, because I didn't leave much of a legacy in Montreal, I'll tell you that. So, I don't think anybody remembers those days, let alone myself trying to remember those days. But junior for me, Ray, is something that was pretty special. I played with some amazing hockey players in that organization, and they raised and brought up some amazing young men. And I think it started with our coaches, Tom Rennie and Don Hay, were just amazing human beings, both different personalities, both different types of people, but brought out the best in their players in different ways. I think, the coach that you have first in junior as a young guy, you always really look up to. And I really looked up to Tom. He was a great coach for guys like Niedermeyer and Sador, because they played a really skilled game. And then as we kind of came through and Don took over, we became a really gritty and hard team to play against, with Jerome and Shane Doan and myself and Strudwick and Brad Lukowicz and these sorts of guys. We became a really gritty team to win those. We were skilled. Don't get me wrong, as junior players, we had skill, but we had a really different sort of mentality towards the game than that first kind of team that won the Memorial Cup. So for us, it was great coaching and a great city to be brought up in.
when I think of you, like I guess where we ran across would have been when you were in Tampa, and I look at Tampa now, and they're like this machine, like like well drafted and well organized. And what rink did you play in? Where were you guys playing your home games then?
Well, by the time I got traded there, we were in the building they're in now.
Oh, you were, so you missed the other.
I did, yeah. I was lucky enough to have the posh building instead of the other building before that. Yeah, when I first came in, the exhibition games and things of that nature were being played in that old, what the heck was it? I don't even know what the heck that
was. The fairgrounds thing, right?
Yeah. And then obviously I played my first couple of years in Montreal, and then by the time I got traded to Tampa, they were in the new building. But yeah, I remember those early soirees and that.
Oh, what out there! I really started remembering it when I saw that Arizona is going to play in that 5,000 seat arena, and I was like, man, that rink in Tampa, the seats were on one side. Yeah, I'm like, it wasn't even a junior rink.
It's going to be really awkward and weird to watch that in Arizona. To tell you the truth, yeah, I don't understand, but at the end of the day, I guess that's why I'm sitting here right now and not running something in the NHL, is because I don't know what the heck's going on. So,
well, maybe that's better for. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, man. You're right all the time. All you do is just fire something out. And
yeah, exactly.
Hey, did you have a favorite guy to play against? Like he ground your gears. You were into him, like into his head all the time. Like, was there somebody in all your battles you're like, man, I battled that guy forever?
Well, I'll give you two examples. The first one was Steve Thomas. Stumpy and I used to go at it like crazy when he was in New Jersey and I was in Montreal. And then when I was in Tampa and he was in Toronto, we went at it from the drop of the puck to the end of the game. It was just nonstop. I think two competitive guys. But, my job at that time was obviously to get under the skin of the better players in the opposition. So I thought if I drove Matt Sundin crazy, Stevie Thomas would come looking. So it was that was kind of the first thing for me. And then I think, I've become pretty good buddies with Matthew Barnaby in retirement, playing in the alumni games and things of that nature. And we used to go at it like crazy from the drop of the puck as well. And it was more of, I think we only fought once or twice, but I think it was more of like the funny one-liners and the things that you could come up with to make everybody on the bench laugh between me and him than it was anything else. But the game within the game has really changed. If you look at the way it is now, there's not a lot of talking, and the personalities are very toned down. I really enjoyed that part of it, from the referees right on out. You knew who the referees were, and you could just knew how far you could take it. You could give some guys a little bit more, and you had to give some guys a little bit less. But I do miss that personality part of it, because at the end of the day, a lot of the game is entertainment, and so it's sometimes tough to watch not seeing some of those personalities.
You said so. Did you fought Stumpy a few times, I assume?
I fought Stumpy twice for sure, maybe a third time. I can't. I know for sure twice. Once in Montreal, and once when I was with Tampa in Toronto.
How'd you do?
The first one was a really good one, but I probably lost that one. The second one, I think that I got it pretty good, because he laughed about it afterwards. He has a team picture in his house where he has two black eyes, so I must have got him somewhere good in that second one. So we kind of giggle about that when we're playing golf now.
Tux, I fought him one time. I never fought. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, thinking that, he's my size. I mean, like we could fight. As Jamie McLennan said, I came third in that fight. He pummeled me. He hit me about 57 times. I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is. It was our first year. What a terrible mistake to make. That was awful.
Yeah, he threw fast and furious. Let's put it that way. Stumpy was very good at throwing fists really, really quickly. So I tried to get as fast as I could. The first one, he got me pretty good. I was pretty young at that time, but by the second one, I was doing okay.
You were ready. Yeah, you were ready. Look, Darcy, we see so many players jump from maybe not right out of the National Hockey League and into coaching or management, there can be a transition period there. So many guys mindful, respectful of their young families. Most recently, you got Marty St. Louis on the bench with the Montreal Canadiens, Vinny Lecavalier named as a special advisor in hockey operations. You've dabbled a little bit, but is it similar for you, or have you had opportunities where there was a chance for you to dive into hockey operations with a specific team?
No, I haven't had that opportunity, and I've never really pushed it. I've always enjoyed, this is my first year not coaching minor hockey. I'm actually thoroughly enjoying myself, spending some time just sitting in the stands and being dad. My biggest thing and regret in hockey is that I never got an opportunity to chase a Stanley Cup. We had good teams here in Toronto. We went fairly long distance. I think as a player, you always want to win a Stanley Cup, and that's probably my biggest regret. And would I love to do it? Absolutely. But I'm a big believer in, working your way up. You look at a lot of these coaches that have spent years in the minors, building themselves up, learning the game. So to go back to that scenario is probably not something that I'm willing to do at this particular point in my life. But you never know what's going to happen down the road. I never say never to maybe getting back into the game in that aspect. But I'm a big believer in learning the game and becoming a sponge. I've had some really good coaches over the course of my life to build off of. And a big person in my life that I look up to that's done it the long way is Travis Green. He did everything he possibly could to become a great head coach in the National Hockey League, and he has. And unfortunately, it didn't work out in Vancouver. But he's got a long time in this game. He's probably going to chase that Stanley Cup down somewhere else now.
What do you miss most about playing? Is it just the competition, or is it the guys, or is it a bit of both? Or
I think it's a bit of both. I don't miss my body feeling the way it did my last couple of years. I was a young guy when I left the game, relatively young, so to speak, at 35, 36. And my body was beat up then, Ray. It was completely falling apart. So for me, I don't miss that aspect of it. I do miss the banter in the locker room, being around the guys on the road trips, having conversations. Brian McCabe and I roomed together, even though we didn't need our own rooms by the end of our tenure in Toronto. And just because I think that camaraderie and that talking after the game and being together with the guys, Caber and I would go back to our room, and Jeff O'Neill would show up, and we'd hot stove it and chit chat about the game and life and family and things of that nature. And that's probably the biggest thing that I miss about not playing and not being around the guys.
What keeps you competitive now?
Golf.
What's your cap?
I'm a 3.1 index at Coppenwood, which now I have a place down in Florida. So that puts me at a 1 down there, and I don't like it very much because those old buggers are right in my pocket. So I'm having a hard time with the how they're dealing with the cap down there in Florida. But I mean, I got it pretty good this summer. I went from a 6.1 index down to a 3.1. So I had a really good summer. 157 rounds will do that to you, boys. Oh. And I've got the bug, and I thoroughly keep myself competitive because of golf.
Wow. I played yesterday in Vancouver, my first round out, and I was saying to Dregs, man, it's just that early year golf is so great. You don't really care. No. And you're like, I hit lots of great shots, and I was like, wow, that was pretty good. Now I can't wait to play again. And then you start digging yourself in a hole, right?
That's exactly it. You get so excited to play after that first round because you're like, wow, I played really good. And then you go out the second time and you're playing for some cash money and watch boom, you're digging in your pocket and handing it over.
I play, honestly, you say you're down there and the older guys, they get into your pocket. I played with this one guy yesterday. He's about 72. I know he hit a shot, but I don't know where. It was unbelievable watching him. Same distance every shot, never missed a putt. Shot
Deadly
like
around the
78.
greens,
It drove
eh?
me crazy.
Yeah.
Drove me crazy.
Deadly. They get it there and close to the green and two, and then they chip and putt like I've never seen anything in my entire life. They're so good at it. Like, it's nuts. And I got the worst. I could drive the ball good. I could putt really good, but my hands around the green are just terrible, and that's where I lose my shots. Just terrible.
With all due respect, should we
Should we be doubtful of that?
Yes, I mean, can we put one to the other or no?
Exactly. That's why I scored all those backdoor tap-in goals, because I'm a great putter from 5 feet in. You put it outside 40 feet, and I can't do anything.
All right, buddy. Well, we can't let you go without asking you a Toronto Maple Leaf question. So I'm going to ask you to put Ray Ferraro's hat on. Be the analyst for us, all right?
Okay.
You can see what you've got atop the East, and the Maple Leafs are in that mix, of course. And then you see how difficult it is in the West with the Calgary Flames pushing the way they are. Colorado, a great story. So in your eyes, is Toronto a top Stanley Cup contender?
I believe they are, Dregs. I think I look at this team, and it all comes down to mentality come playoff time. Like, they've got a great team. There's no doubt about it. You watch their team, there was parts of the season where they could really lock it down defensively too. So if I look at the team, it's more of a mindset going into the playoffs. Sometimes you can get stuck in your own head. And if you can get out of that sort of thought process and the compete level goes to a place where, you got to grind it out in a 7-game series, it gets tight. Everybody knows that in playoff time. It gets tight. And I really think that, some of the lessons that they've learned over the last, 16 months in playing in the playoffs, I think they're going to really bode well for them this year. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the fact that there's going to be fans in the stands.
Yeah.
Scotiabank Arena is going to be absolutely going crazy. And we got a little bit of bite in this team, and I like that. I like that little bit of nastiness that could come out from certain types of guys. And then you look at the defense, and hopefully they can, maybe do a little bit of upgrading there from a standpoint of physicality and size. And, there's some things there, and Campbell's played really well this year. I know that he's had some blips on the screen, but who doesn't in an 82-game schedule? So let's just see how it goes the rest of the way. And then I'm really looking forward to that playoffs.
Terrific stuff. Darcy, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, we'd like to raise a glass of 44-year-old CC to Darcy Tucker, Ray, for joining us. Presented by our friends at Canadian Club Whiskey. 44-year-old release is available now everywhere. We had an opportunity, a couple of months ago, right, to sample just the entire series. And we got the early taste of the 44-year-old. And I'm not an aficionado. I can't imagine it gets much better than the 44-year-old CC. It was smooth. It was tasty, top shelf stuff.
Unbelievable. And until we got in to working with Canadian Club, I'd really never had it.
Yeah.
Never had whiskey. Oh my gosh. I think I might have got spoiled here right out of the...
We've been spoiled, man. There's no question.
Oh,
the 42,
so good.
The 43, the 44.
Honestly, if you want to try it, not just because we're working with Canadian Club and they're amazing people, Tish and the crew is just awesome.
Yeah.
Try it. I think you will love it.
Worth every penny.
Oh, smooth, man. I loved it.
Speaking of, it's always good to have guys willing to talk and tell stories. Darcy Tucker joining us here in episode 21. And part of our spinoff on social media is the rapid fire, right? The Ray Dregs rapid fire. Mm-hmm. And we got talking about his most influential coach. And he mentioned Pat Quinn. And I'm kind of thinking, man, I wish we had talked to him about that in the pod, because instantly he just started talking stories of Pat and how influential Pat was, not only on his career, but on his life.
Yeah, he said, he's telling us about the way he impacted him as a person, more so even than as a player, how he helped family-wise and, to be a better dad and a better husband. And man, you can run through 100 players that played for Pat, and there'll all be some variation of that type of story, like how much they respected him, how much they loved being around him. He told a hilarious story about Pat dropping the dry erase marker at the board and then not quite being able to pick it up.
He's a big man. He's a big man.
Big man. And everybody's starting to giggle a bit because nobody knows, should they go help him? And Steve Thomas, Stumpy, was close enough to him, so he'd go to help him, and Pat would tell him to F off because he could get the pen himself. And it reminded me of Al Arbor, who, I think the world of, and two of the most influential coaches over the past 50 years in the National Hockey League. And Al, because they called him radar because he had these big, thick glasses. He couldn't see. And so he'd write on the board, but he'd have to get up so close to it that he'd be writing a breakout on the board, but you couldn't see because his head was in the way. And so we'd have to Al, move away. And he'd get pissed off at us. Oh my God. But we just loved being around these guys. And Darcy talked about Pat Quinn like that. And as he was talking about Pat, I thought of Al right away in the same way. But man, you can see how Darcy loved to compete. Oh. And he loved the juice of the game.
No doubt. Is there a player in today's NHL that reminds you in any way, shape, or form of Darcy Tucker? Maybe how he came up, made it to the NHL? Because as he talked about, he was thinking of staying on the farm. He wasn't thinking of being an NHL player.
Well, that Dregs, to start with, just amazed me that he never dreamed of growing up and being an NHL player. Like he just thought his dad was the best player, and he idolized his dad. He played senior hockey. And I'm like, geez, in Toronto, different right now because they're all different. But like Michael Bunting's got a little bit of that in him. Like by the end of the night, most people want to kill Bunting.
Yeah.
And Darcy had, of course, a lot of that. Now, Darcy wasn't the player, not many are, that Brad Marchand is. But there's nobody that grinds people more than him. Than Marchand. The ability to play and score and create and drive people absolutely up the walls. Darcy, you'd look at Darcy and he would just bug you. He would, and he played like that. He was going to make an effort to be in the middle of the game all the time.
All right, time for the most popular segment on the Ray Dregs Hockey Podcast, and that is our visit with Chris Abbott from Coolbet.co. And there's a fair bit to talk about from an NHL perspective, Chris. We'll get to that in just a moment, but why don't we clean up the Super Bowl? Take a look back at Super Bowl Sunday. Yeah, actually, Ray, you want to start there?
Oh, no.
There's got to be a Sean McVay reference, question, something that we can tease Abs about here.
If you could just describe your joy in watching the Rams hoist that trophy after the owner, 7 office employees, and everybody else got the trophy. What the hell do they do?
I actually said that to the group I was watching with. What did this guy have to do? You got guys bleeding.
Well, he paid $1 billion.
Tore his ACL. Yeah, he paid for it. He paid for it, sure. But come on. It's just the optics are so bad. Nobody.
And it's so dull, no matter what you ask those guys. But
unless it's Mark Cuban, I don't want to see it.
Right. But you had to be happy for the coach. He did a hell of a job.
You know what I was happy the coach did? He called the first time out in the game, which I bet on. So I'm watching.
Well, that was a stone cold lock.
I'm watching with some people. I'm watching with some friends who aren't really sports bettors, and the 2 times where I freaked out the most during the night was a timeout call and a Johnny Hecker punt going in for a touchback, which was 4.5 to 1. So the punt goes for a touchback. They go to commercial. I'm losing it. I'm fist pumping. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, you guys don't even know, and you probably don't want to know. But yeah, so there was a lot of popular props like that one hit, which made it an interesting night. Like McVay to call the first time out. There was no coach's challenge, so that was a push. The touchback prop, the Cup MVP prop, Odell to score a touchdown and the first touchdown. All those were very, very highly bet props, over 5.5 sacks. So, it wasn't an overly profitable night for the book, but a lot of people had a lot of fun betting on the game for sure.
And so does that, even though it's the biggest night, that's a good thing for the book, isn't it? That drags more people back, correct?
Yeah, no, it's great. So I always,
because it would make, if you're in the game, then you're like, you want to stay in the game, right?
For sure.
So leading up to the Super Bowl, it was actually a really good week for the players. You name the sport. People were beating the book pretty good for about the 10 days, 2 weeks leading up. And I'm like, that's fine. More money for people to bet on the Super Bowl. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, once, when you win, you generally play it again. So, from a business model perspective, it's a good thing. But, for us, the Super Bowl is more about a player acquisition day, right? People who don't bet or maybe have never bet are generally drawn in by something. Oh, by the way, I won the coin toss, which was heads. There's a lot of money coming in on tails, so I went the other way.
Yeah.
So people like to bet that stuff. They like to bet what the first song in the halftime show is going to be. So you expose new people to your brand that probably haven't been there before. So that's what the Super Bowl is really about. Not so much of a profit loss day for the book. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, does anyone actually believe that Sean McVay was considering retirement? I mean, that report surfaced, and his lovely fiance had to come out to set the record straight. But I mean, honestly, look, the TV world has been fantastic to Ray Ferraro. I mean, he lives in opulence. But is McVay coming? Is he going to leave the sidelines and a Super Bowl winning team to jump into the broadcast booth or onto a TV set? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, I mean, you got guys like me out there judging his every decision and like just casting the shadow over him. I mean, at least if he goes on TV, only 50% of the fans watching will hate him at any given time, right, Ray? Because you're always cheering for one team
but
or the other.
Here's the thing, though, guys. Like, John Madden said, if you can't get something done in 10 years, then it's time to try something else. John Madden was a Super Bowl winning coach, and he said, I'm done. It's 10 years. I'm out. And everybody thought he was nuts. And that was in a day when, it certainly was a lot different than today. And then he, just think when he passed just a little while ago, had he been a coach, his impact wouldn't have been the same. Now, I'm not saying McVay's ready to step away from that stuff, but if he walked away and said he wants to broadcast, can you imagine the lineup outside his door?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a good-looking guy.
I think he would. Can you imagine the money he would make?
Well, the thing they say about him is that he's brilliant about the game, right? And we don't see that, right, when we're watching.
Right. So you don't.
If he can translate that in the booth the same way a Tony Romo does, I mean, Romo makes a ridiculous amount of money, and
crazy amount. He
gets an out clause to go play golf if he wants. What kind of contract is that? So, if Sean McVay wants to do that, you got to think that the grind of being an NFL head coach and the scrutiny and the pressure and trying to keep 60 to 100 guys engaged and on the same playbook, a lot tougher than calling games once a week, I would have to think.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, you want to talk about the Calgary Flames? Are you projecting Stanley Cup odds, or are you just acknowledging the play of the Calgary Flames? I mean, they've certainly played their way into the discussion of being a top contender.
They certainly have. I mean, their record speaks for itself. They were, I think, 25 or 30 to 1 just a couple of weeks ago to win the Stanley Cup. And I know we've mentioned it actually on the show before that's not a bad long shot bet. But I mean, there's Vegas, there's Colorado, there's this, there's that. Well, they're now 15 to 1 to win the Stanley Cup, just behind Carolina at 12 to 1. So, they're certainly opening some eyes, and it's the most Toronto thing ever. But I watched the game when the Leafs went in there the other night. This Leafs team who everyone's pretty impressed about, and by the way, are 9 to 1 Stanley Cup favorites. And Calgary just kind of had their way with them, right? They kind of shoved them around a little bit.
Yeah.
So to me, that was a real eye opener. This team, and hey, they're taking the steps to add pieces like Tyler Toffoli's no slouch. He's going to score big goals for them. And just when you look at their roster kind of up and down, and the pedigree of their head coach, and they've got an all-world goaltender. And pretty soon, it's like, okay, well, where are the holes with this team? So I think, they're a pretty sexy Stanley Cup pick right now, especially here in Canada.
I think maybe more than any team this year, the more I watch them, the more I believe in them. Usually you start going, like for me anyway, you start going the other way. You watch them a lot, and then you start to pick something apart. And I'm like, they're just good. Like maybe I'd like a little more creativity out of their center position. Like I think Elias Lindholm is the most underrated player in the league. I think he's phenomenal.
Really good.
But Backlund and Monahan, they just kind of chug along there, and I'm like, maybe something. And then I'm like, but why would Brad Treliving touch that?
No.
They win all the time.
Mhm.
Like they win. It's like when I hear about Colorado that they want to, they want to add this guy or maybe they'll add that guy. I asked Jared Bednar at one of the last games before the All-Star break. I said, like, how do you coach this team when you win every night? Like literally, and he laughed and he's like, yeah, he goes, it's a funny problem to have. He's like, but there's very little to say, hey, we should do this better or that better. I don't think the Flames need to do anything else. They just look good. I would jump at that. Like those are still playable odds, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're down there, like, Pittsburgh is 16-1, Minnesota is 17-1, Boston 21. So I mean, they're at the top of this long shot group, and I don't think they really belong there. The teams ahead of them on the list: Colorado, Tampa, Florida, Vegas, Toronto, Carolina. Like they're in that conversation. You've got to think. So if they're the longest odds of that group, hey, why not?
And a lot of those teams are going to cannibalize themselves on the East.
Yeah, that's right.
Sure.
So if you're looking at the West, you've got Colorado and Vegas as the only teams in front of them.
Uh-oh. Is that your fire alarm?
Yeah, it is. They're doing testing here. You know what it's like. We had this conversation before.
That hasn't happened in a long time, though.
I like
so
it.
If we waited
I like that. I like seeing the angst on your face there, Ab.
Scared me,
nice.
Well, it's funny because just before we started recording, we were talking about the woes of production, right?
Yeah,
then you
exactly.
get the loud blast, and that's funny.
All right, buddy, we'll let you go because there's another bang coming here, but quiet stretch for you at this point. There it is!
Get out of here, Abs. Get the hell out of here.
Oh yeah, it's all right. A few days quiet, but it'll pick up soon. All right.
Hopefully that alarm goes all weekend.
Oh man, classic. See you, fellas.
Later. All right, Abs. Take care. And just before we get to Ask Ray and Dregs Anything, we've got an update. Breaking news. Yes, as we teased, we're recording this on Friday, and you've got the semifinal between Russia and Sweden. The winner advances to play Finland. And Ray, the winner is?
The winner is Russia, an 8-round shootout.
Oh, boy.
It got down to the last shooter, and Russia needed to score. They did.
Mm-hmm.
Swedes could have won 4 times in a row. The Swedes could have won. They missed each time.
That's
and
Johan's
then Russia
fault.
Scores in round 8.
That's Johan Garpenlov's fault. He picked the
Oh, yeah, it is. It's going to be his fault. See, they didn't have enough skill for the shootout. So now it's Russia, Finland in the gold medal game, Slovakia, and Sweden in the bronze.
Oof. All right. Well, that gold medal game will have a little bit of drama to it. No question about that. Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. Every week we invite you to fire us your questions. You can throw it at Twitter, Instagram, at Ray and Dregs, or on our new flashy website, rayanddregs.com. How about a Canucks question from Instagram, Ray, to get us going? JJ Holiday 79 is asking, should the Vancouver Canucks trade or keep JT Miller?
Unanswerable until you know what the package coming back is. The problem with trading a player like JT Miller always is then you immediately begin the search for the next JT Miller.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you could roll in a first-round draft pick, a grade A prospect, not like a filler prospect, but a top-end prospect, and somebody on a roster?
Mm-hmm.
Would you... Geez, you'd have to look at it.
Would the fan base be okay with that? Like, I mean, because you're essentially acknowledging that it's clearly about building the near future.
Well, I think they would be, Dregs,
Yeah.
because, and the reason I say that is pretty informed, for better or worse, fan base in Vancouver.
Yeah.
They're well aware that there are no prospects. Their best young players are on this team. That's not good.
No, it's not.
So if you don't have a lot of draft picks, which they don't, you have to replenish them. if you're going to replenish them, you have to trade.
Mm-hmm.
You have to balance today versus tomorrow. And so the balance becomes, is today good enough
Mm-hmm.
to not worry about tomorrow yet? And my opinion is no, it's not good enough. It's not a team that's going to threaten really right now. So you have to build your prospect pool. I don't think you really have a choice.
JT Miller is a decent name. Donovan Hamilton is asking for a prediction on the biggest name to be traded before the deadline. I mean, it could be Claude Giroux. It could be Benny Sherratt if you want to include him there.
Well, I would say Giroux's the biggest name.
Yeah.
Like Ben Sherratt, Ben Sherratt is going to garner a lot of interest. He's a really good top 4 defenseman. What about John Klingberg?
Another big name.
I would, pretty big name. I would think he's probably going to end up on the move.
Chikrin's been out there for a while, name-wise.
I would say the biggest name, though, that's going to move is Marc-Andre Fleury.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to go somewhere. And if he doesn't, I don't know what the Blackhawks are doing. You're going to make that move, and there's going to be a team that's going to get right down there and say, you know what? We have to be the guys.
Unless Marc-Andre digs in his heels for family reasons and just says, I'm not chasing the cup. He's such a fiery competitor that
I don't know him. I don't know him well enough to say, but I can't imagine that he's going to say, yeah, I'll just hang out here for the rest of the year.
All right. How about a couple of fun questions? We always get so serious with this hockey.
Oh, yeah. Stuff. What do we got?
Overdrive memes. Interesting. That's the name of the account asking the question. Could be Jeff O'Neill sending this. Underrated food city in the NHL.
Ooh, that's good. Well, I don't know. It depends what you rate. Like Montreal is amazing.
Right. Chicago, terrific. I mean, go down the list, right? Every city has great
But I
restaurants.
mean, like, underrated. Okay. I like barbecue.
Yeah.
Dallas.
Okay.
Dallas is a winner.
Yeah. That's a good call. We used to go, when I traveled more than we do now, Colorado years ago, I'm sure it's still there, had the Chop House. I mean, I think there's a channel. Oh, boy. Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, but see, I think, Dregs, we're talking about more, not like the bigger, like, not the bigger named places or the bigger chain place. Like, I think we're talking about, like, where can you find good local stuff?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, you find a good barbecue place in Dallas, and it might not look like the place that you're envisioning. There might be a couple of shingles missing off the roof. You walk into it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable.
Okay, one more fun one. Instagram again, Glenn Stevens. And this is not a plant. I don't know. Glenn obviously liked this segment. When is Throat Punch coming back? ? I miss it. We kind of drifted away from it in COVID, right?
We did. I think we need to make more of an effort.
You do, eh?
Well, now that the games are back on a regular schedule, we can get away from, like, I will say, if Throat Punch comes back, there is zero political overtone to it. After 2 years, that can't be.
Mm-hmm.
You want to scream and yell, and you think your thing, and I think my thing.
Yeah.
Have at it. Go ahead. We're not doing it on Throat Punch.
Okay.
So we're talking about the game. Or if maybe you had somebody like a neighbor who's a jackass blowing their snow into your yard. Now that could be a throat.
Yeah, see, that's just living the life Throat Punch stuff, right?
Yeah.
While you're talking, I'm trying to think of one. I don't have one this week. So I kind of...
You know what, Dregs? I'm going to say it again. I played golf yesterday. I don't have a Throat Punch. It was just wonderful.
All right. What's the week look like as we wrap up episode 21?
Family Day out here in BC. I don't know if that's all across Canada.
No, it isn't. It's in certain provinces, but it is in Ontario as well. Yeah.
So Riley, our 15-year-old, has a Pro D Day today and Family Day on Monday.
Wow.
This is like a grand slam for a 15-year-old.
Interesting.
And things are opening up a bit. I think we'll go to the Canucks game this weekend.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
no, I got access now. I got tickets.
That is fantastic. Are they decent seats, or do they put you up in the upper deck? Just
I don't know. We haven't been.
Wow.
Cammy's only been hired for 4 days. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, but do you get 2? Do you get 3? Do you get as many as you want? What happens? You're gonna need 3.
I think it's 2. I think it's 2. I got to be honest with you.
What happens
what
to
could
Reese?
it? Oh, Reese is going. That's not the question. The question is whether Riley's going or I'm going.
Oh, okay.
So I think there's a decent chance I drop them off at the door and watch
And
the
you
game
use your
from
press
across the
badge
street.
to get in.
Yeah, and just, hey, would you look at this? I'm coming
meet
in
you
to
down
study
below.
the game tonight. You wouldn't believe it.
That's exciting times. That's going to be
Yeah, so we'll go to the Canucks game, do a little family stuff, and I think it's decent weather, which is kind of okay, and and then I start traveling again next week. I'm back on the schedule next week. And how about you? Aside from
well, you know what?
driveway?
It's reading week here in Ontario for university students.
Kids are back.
One, and this is what's humorous to me. So daughter Katie is in law school at Lakehead. She's coming back from Thunder Bay, which is a flight. Mason Drager is in Guelph, which is an hour and 15 minutes away. Nah, I'm not going to bother. He'd rather hang out with his buddies.
You're
in
out
the house
the
they
door.
live in. Wow.
The only thing you got to do, Dregs, as we all know, as kids get older, hey, could you put a little money in the debit account, please?
Yeah, I made that mistake a long time ago. Reminder, check out Ray and Dregs' social channels for Rapid Fire, presented by Kintec Footwear and Orthotics, keeping you active on your feet for life. A little later this week, we'll have another Rapid Fire on the way. Darcy Tucker, by the way, is tremendous. So thank you to him, and thank you to Kintec. Huge shout out to our partners, Ray, who make the podcast possible. Our title sponsor, of course, our good friends at Canadian Club Whiskey, who every week we ask, are you over beer? What about Coolbet.co, the free-to-play sports and casino games website? Thank you. By Endy.ca, remember, use code RD75, and you're going to save $75 on a mattress. By Kintec Footwear and Orthotics. Book a consultation at kintec.net. And by Boston Pizza. Pick it up or get it delivered to your door. Let Boston Pizza doing the cooking tonight. Thanks again, everybody. It's been a good episode. Thanks to Darcy Tucker for joining us here in episode 21. Until next week, keep it on the short grass and stay warm here in Eastern Canada.
Thanks for listening, everyone.